Hey everyone, First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich again. Just a quick weather update this morning. I want to make this one kind of short because I got a lot going on today, obviously. My son's got his first teacher-parent conference for preschool. He's in pre-K 3, so we'll go have fun doing that today before I go to work. But I just want to give a quick update on what's going on, the situation. Snow's still on the way. The question marks are about mounts and where, and we talk about that in a second. But first, there's the Arctic front. You can kind of see it there. I'm going to try to draw it here. Real see. The blue is basically where the Arctic front is. It's sitting right in there, and it's diving to the south and east very quickly. It's going to be here later tonight into tomorrow. We're going to see a little bit of snow develop in the North Carolina mountains tonight, and maybe a quick 1 to 2 inches. You notice the precipitation developing down here on the Gulf Coast. That is key because what's going to happen is this Arctic front is going to dive down here and kind of hang out on the coast, and that's when we start getting overrunning in energy. It's a pretty complex setup, which is further making the forecast really hard. But a couple things I'm going to show you on the model data. We'll turn off everything else on here. First thing I'm going to show you is what we call 500 millibar vorticity. This is essentially where you look for disturbances in the mid-levels and upper levels of the atmosphere. There's our Arctic front. You can see the disturbance behind the surface front, but it's this little piece of energy over Baja California that's the key in this whole thing. As the Arctic front comes down, this little piece is going to eject and move to the east, and it's going to help intensify the overrunning, or the frontal genesis, what we call lift over the front. That's going to help produce the heavy swath of precipitation. There's still two moving pieces, and again, you know, it's like that math problem you had in middle school or even high school, where you have a train leaving Philadelphia at 50 miles an hour and a train leaving, you know, St. Louis at 40 miles an hour. How long does it take for them to get to Atlanta? You know, it's that kind of equation that you're working on in the atmosphere. So there's a lot of variables. So when you take a snapshot right now, if the variable changes in the next hour or two, all of a sudden your equation is totally kaput. So you gotta remember that when forecasting the weather. It's very difficult. We only use snapshots of what's going on. So that being said, let's go to the snowfall graphic here on the GFS, because I really think in many ways the GFS, ironically enough, which isn't typically a great model, is doing a pretty good job, and at least it's consistent and making sense, though I'm taking a blend of some of the other models. So we'll go out into the future here, and again, this is snow depth, mind you, not necessarily snowfall, how much is accumulated on the ground, and you might actually see some of the melting. Notice as the Arctic front sets up, we actually get some overrunning early on the North Carolina coast and also down across the mid-Gulf South. Now, as I go into the future here, we're getting into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. And again, the timing of this is really Tuesday night into Wednesday. And really, I think most of Tuesday is fine. It's really, to me, going to be a Wednesday event. You see how the snow really begins to pile up, especially here in North Carolina. And part of the reason that happens is that little piece of energy I showed you coming out of Baja California. There's just going to be more energy on the Carolina coast for this thing to work with. So as I go out into the future here, we'll go out, and you can actually see the melting. Notice how it starts to melt. So that's kind of the peak of the storm here, and this is part of the problem with this system. You see that sharp gradient. Around Charlotte, that's about 1 to 2 inches, but you go a couple counties over, you start getting into 2 to 3 to 4, and maybe even 5. And on the coast, the totals are very problematic because there is going to be some mixing. The immediate coast, it might be freezing rain and sleet, or off freezing rain mixing with snow. As you get deeper into the cold air back to the northwest, that's when you start to see more of a snow. So for the Charlotte area, I actually think in many ways, the Schreff plume, which is all the different variables that you see here, you could see stretching from as high as 10 inches, which isn't likely, to 0 inches. The mean is about 4 inches. I could cut that in half again and be about 1 to 2. I think that's probably more accurate to say that's going to fall. And when you look at the Schreff soundings, this again, just so you know, here's Tuesday morning, here's Tuesday evening into Wednesday morning. Notice it's not a lot of heavy snow every hour, it's a lot of light snow. And I think that could be how this event is defined in the Charlotte area, is very light snow that lasts for maybe 12 hours, and that light fluffy snow in the Arctic air could accumulate 1 to 2 inches. So later today at 4 o'clock on NBC Charlotte, I'll have my first snowfall map. I'm going to hand draw this one because the models, I think, are just going to do a horrible job. And I think for right now, if I were to say, I think you're talking 1 to 2 inches in Charlotte, but the northern part of the county could be a half an inch to a dusting, maybe 1 inch. Southeastern part of the county could be approaching 2 inches. And then you go into Monroe, could be 3 inches. Wadesboro could be 4, and Rockingham could be 5 or 6. So that's the kind of, and again, because it's such a fine line, you move that line 10 miles, 20 miles, all of a sudden it changes dramatically. I'm going to focus a lot on the chances here, probabilities, try not to get caught up in the totals. And again, everybody hears me say snow, they look at the highest total and they think that's going to happen everywhere. It's not going to happen. Take whatever the highest total is, whatever the lowest total you are hearing, and go in the middle. And I bet you're probably going to be pretty close to what you're going to see. There are a lot of caveats with this storm. Because of the amount of moisture, the Arctic air in place, the bust potential is super high. So full updates coming up today at 4, 5, and 6 on NBC Charlotte. And of course, I'll have things up to date online throughout the day. Hope you have a great Monday, and I'll see you today on TV.